from San Francisco, California, this is the Rock and Roll Geek Show. This is the story of my rock and roll butler.
Welcome to the Rock and Roll Geek Show. My name's Michael Butler. Thanks a lot for joining me. I really appreciate it. As you can tell by the noise, I am driving, and it is day 4 of the Dog Days of Podcasting, August 4th, and it is 5:59 p.m. when I'm recording this Dog Days episode. I'm driving to band practice. Tonight I'm practicing with JJ Savage. We have a gig on Saturday in Pacifica at a place called the Longboard something. It's a bar, Longboard Bar and Grill or something like that. It's in Pacifica. We're playing with a band called State Line Empire, and I'm on my way to practice in Oakland. So I'm driving from San Francisco to Oakland. Day 4 of the Dog Days of Podcasting, where me and several other super geeks attempt to do a show a day for the entire month of August, and today's day 4. I got an email from Paul Houston. Sorry for clearing my throat. I do not have any beer in me because I can't drink and drive. So let me take a sip of this iced tea. Paul Houston writes, a Dog Days show content suggestion. Hey Michael, I would think a lot of your listeners would like to hear about your European tour with American Heartbreak, how it came about, who organized / booked the tour, the flights over, the gigs, tour stories, etc. Would be a cool companion show to the American Heartbreak album track by tracks you've done. Well, thank you, Paul Houston, for that suggestion. So I'm going to honor your suggestion. I don't know if I'll do. First of all, we did more than one tour of Europe. I think we might have done 3 or 4. But I'll talk about the first. I'll talk about the history of American Heartbreak, and I'll at least go through the first tour. Maybe we'll save a couple of the other tours for later on in the Dog Days. So American Heartbreak. Let's see. I knew Billy Rowe. Well, I met Billy when I was playing at I had left. Exodus had broken up, I think, or maybe I was still in Exodus, but I was playing with some friends of mine in a band called Blind Tom. There was a Kiss tribute show, so all these bands got together and played like 3 Kiss songs. And Billy had a band called Mind Zone, and they were doing the Kiss tribute. They played Lick It Up and maybe 1 or 2 other songs. The song I remember that we played was Mr. Speed, and the drummer thought I looked cool on stage, so next thing I know, I got an email from the drummer said, hey, we think you're a cool bass player. Would you be interested in coming and jamming with Mind Zone? We need a bass player. Our bass player is moving to guitar. And I met Billy a long time, or a few months before that, at a place called The Stone. I think we were there to see Screaming Jets doing their possibly only American tour. I had read that somehow Screaming Jets had something to do with the Angels because they're both from Australia. So I went, and Billy was there, and I met Billy, and I knew Billy from Mind Zone because when Mind Zone played with Exodus at a place called the Trocadero, I thought, well, that guitar player looks really cool. And that was Billy Rowe. And so when the drummer for Mind Zone emailed me, I was out of Exodus, and he emailed me and asked me if I'd be interested in playing. I said, oh, with that guitar player, that guy's cool. I'll play with these guys. So anyway, fast forward to several months or a year, however long later in Mind Zone. Mind Zone had about run their course, and Billy and I had discovered a band called the Wild Hearts. Earth versus the Wild Hearts, and somehow Billy and I discovered them at the same time, and we were both fell in love. I mean, the music, you know who the Wild Hearts are if you're a friend of the Rock and Roll Geek Show. This was around the time when Earth versus the Wild Hearts had just come out, and I don't need to tell you how great of an album Earth versus the Wild Hearts are. So we said, man, this would be a cool band. Let's do this kind of music. This is what I want to play. This music speaks to me. It's straight ahead rock and roll. It's angry. The songs are catchy as shit, and it's heavy. So we found this guy named Lance Boone, who was in a band called Diamond Star Halo, and Eric Lannon, who Billy knew from bands in the past, from Mordred and Touch Me Hooker and a bunch of other bands. he was into the Wild Hearts, and the guy from Diamond Star Halo, Lance Boone, looked pretty cool. We just needed one more guitar player, and Billy knew this guy, Curtis. No, he knew this guy, August. He's a really guy who came up here from LA, August. He only played with us a short period of time. So anyway, that was American Heartbreak. We had a look. You know, we were dressed a little bit glam, and I wrote pretty much catchy punk pop songs, and Billy wrote some catchy AC/DC style tunes, and Lance had a good attitude on, you know, with lyrics, and on stage he was kind of an angry guy who looked like the guys in Manic Street Preachers. And so we played, and we kind of got a following pretty quick because we had that look, and this was around the time Degeneration was also starting to happen, and you know, the underground rock and roll thing was kind of brewing, I guess. This would be the early 90s. And so we formed, we kind of got popular fast, and Billy knew this guy from Paris Records, from the Jet Boy days, label in Texas, and we had recorded an EP of demos, and that label asked us to put it out. Shortly after that, you know, we played gigs and played gigs and played gigs, and we were getting a following, and there was a little scene starting to happen in San Francisco, rest in peace. And this guy named Brett, I think his name's Brett, from a label called Cold Front Records, thought we were a cool band and asked us if we wanted to do an album. So we went, how did this work? Somehow we went up to Seattle to record Postcards from Hell in Stone Gossip. Was it Stone Gossip? One of the guys from Pearl Jam's studio up in Seattle. We recorded Postcards from Hell album. Lived the punk rock lifestyle for about a week, which meant sleeping on people's floors, no showers, broke. Kind of reminded me of the Stevie Sletto days. Anyway, Brett from Cold Front Records also had a magazine called Hit List. And this guy in Europe named Manny Montana, I think that was his last name, Manny Montana, he had a booking agency called Teenage Head Music, and we were on the cover of Hit List magazine. And he said, hey, I think you guys are a cool band. Would you be interested in doing a European tour? And we said, of course we would. Were you kidding me? So we flew to Belgium. His booking agency was out of Belgium. You see why I'm only going to tell about the first tour. He put us up in his house, and for about 2 days till we, maybe 2 or 3 days till we got acclimated to the time change, because we were big jet lag and everything. But he had a wife and kids, and they were very cordial to us, and very hospitable, fed us and all that. And we went on tour. We were in Europe. He booked us a 6-week tour. 36 shows in 6 weeks. So that was 6 shows a night for 6 weeks, maybe 1 show a day. And that was spent traveling. So the first 2 weeks of the tour, I think, were spent with a band from France called Jerky Turkey or something like that. They were a punk, kind of a, maybe a Lookout Records style punk rock band. These guys, you could tell, I think they really wanted to be like the Ramones or maybe Groovy Ghoulies, who we later toured with Groovy Ghoulies, which I'll talk about at another time. That's a lot of stories to tell about that. So the first couple of weeks of the tour was with Jerky Turkey. It was a 3-piece band, and their manager was this girl, and she drove the van. I don't know where. It's kind of cloudy at this point, but there was an old beat-up van. I mean, it's a piece of shit van. No, maybe. I'm not sure if Manny had a van or not. But anyway, we toured in a van, and for about 2 weeks, Jerky Turkey couldn't handle the tour. They bailed from the tour after 2 weeks. They kind of imploded and decided that the road life was not for them. First things I remember about that tour, the first night of the tour was really good, and our drummer Erik woke up in the morning. We woke up at like 9 or 10 in the morning, and Erik is already drunk. And I got elected to be the guy to have a talk with Erik about, hey man, you got to cool it on the drinking. And of course, that turned into a big fight, and We almost lost our drummer after the second day of the tour. Anyway, we kind of mended fences after a couple of gigs. Erik and I realized that we liked playing with each other too much, and we kind of buried the hatchet. And I said, hey man, I'm sorry, you know, I was kind of the messenger and all this shit, so drink all you want, I don't give a shit. So he kind of, you know, we kind of mended our fences, and after 2 weeks we changed bands that we were on tour with, and we hooked up with a band that was way more of our style, a band called, they were from Germany, from Munich, Germany, I think. They were called the Revolvers. They were a really good band. They were kind of like a Degeneration / Hanoi Rock / maybe Dogs d'Amour type band, kind of glam punk, just like us. Wore creepers. Some of us in the American Heartbreak wore creepers, but not me. I was a Converse guy. I always have been. Although now I'm wearing Pro-Keds because I found some leather Pro-Keds at Pro-Keds.com, which I really like a lot. Anyway, so hooked up with Revolvers. They fit us way better, and once we hooked up with these guys, we started playing shows with, well, we did some shows with, when we were with Jerky Turkey, we did some shows on the bill with U.S. Bombs. Those were really good shows, super packed shows, and actually every show we did was pretty packed. It was a really, really fun tour and a good experience for us. So when we hooked up with the Revolvers, they had their own following too, and they brought all kinds of cute German chicks, followed them on the road. So that was some good scenery for us while we're touring. And one of the tours we did, or one of the shows we played, was in Croatia. Croatia, half of the city was was bombed out from recent wars they had apparently, and the other half was really nice and it was not bombed out. So when we got to Croatia, first place we went was this dinner place where the promoter, the guy who booked us in Croatia, you know, because we had to get fed every night. Part of the deal was when you booked a show, you had to feed the bands and you had to put them up somewhere. So he brought us to this sausage place, or some kind of, it's like a Hofbrau type place. I don't think it's called a Hofbrau in Croatia, but it was a place that had all kinds of sausages. Their main meal was sausages, and I was in heaven because my favorite food is sausages. I had blood sausages, I had pork sausages, I just ate and ate and ate sausages. I was, oh my God, I'm in fucking heaven. Sausages and beer. Another thing about Europe, by the way, every town in Europe that we played in had their own local beers. Good times, man. The only thing is the beers were room temperature, and one of the things we had on our rider was we had to have, our beer had to be ice cold. So anyway, sausages galore. Some of the guys in the band were vegetarian. They didn't like it too much, so they had potatoes and bread and stuff like that, but I was really loving it. Stuffed myself on sausages. Then we went to the gig, and it was in the bombed out part of, I could be mistaken with the timeline on this, but I remember the gig was in a bombed out part of town. That could have been the show the next night. The first night I remember, I think we stayed at this kid's house, this kid's parents' house, let us stay in their guest house in the back, and they made us breakfast in the morning. The parents made us like this really nice European breakfast, Croatian breakfast. Anyway, the night before at the gig, everybody was singing along to all of our songs, and we're like, what the fuck? How, this is awesome. And we asked some of the people, how you know American Heartbreak? You know, we sold shitloads of CDs and T-shirts, and they said, oh, we found your music on Napster. This is right in the Napster time. So I am a fan of was a fan of Napster, because people like that in Croatia that did not have access to record stores and were poor, that's how they discovered unknown bands like American Heartbreak. So, I mean, I can see where Metallica would get mad because people are stealing their music, but for bands like us, who were unknown, this was a way for people to find our music. And we, so consequently, we play shows and they're all singing along and they're buying T-shirts, and it's good for bands like us. So, about the next day, or maybe the next afternoon, I started getting sick. And this was like, I think we had like 2 weeks of the tour left, maybe 3 weeks of the tour left. And everything that went into my body came out like within 15 minutes. Either came out the top end or the back end. I could not hold anything down. Not water, nothing. And when you're in a van with 2 other bands, and you got to make a stop every 15 minutes, that ain't too cool. They don't really like that too much. So I had to not drink and not eat anything until we got to the gig. And then we get to the gig, I would eat for nutrition, and about 10 minutes later, it was all coming out. For the entire remainder of the tour, I was sick I did not get better until like the day before we flew back home to San Francisco. Every day, puking, diarrhea, good times, man. And I lost like 15 pounds. But I got to tell you, that tour was so much fun, even when I was sick for 2 weeks, shitting and puking my guts out every single night. I got on stage and rocked out as hard as I could on stage, and then went into the bathroom and suffered for the rest of the night and the next day. But man, was it a fun rock and roll tour with the band Revolvers. I don't know what that band is doing now. If you do, if you're from Europe or anything and remember that band Revolvers, they were on a label called, I believe they were on People Like You Records, I think. I could be wrong about that too, who we later signed with. Well, maybe I'll talk about that story later too. Lots of good things to talk about. But yeah, that's the first European tour with Manny from Teenage Head Music. Like I said, we did 2 or 3 more tours after that, and I'll tell some stories from that later on in the dog days. But here's one last thing. One of the tours, we played France at a place we played every country in Europe on all these tours. We played everything from France, Croatia, Germany, Belgium, Italy. Every place except England is where American Heartbreak played. And so one of the places we played in France was on a Monday night, I believe, at a little bar, and they had a 16-track recording setup in their sound booth, so they could mic every instrument, and it would be on a separate track. And they asked if we'd like to record it, and we said, of course, let's do a live album with this. So at the gig, there were 4 people at that gig. I shit you not, there were 4 people in that gig, and we recorded it. It was a great recording, or a decent recording, but how could we put this thing out as a live album with nobody in the audience? So your friend Michael Butler said, I know what I'll do. I will grab the audience tracks from Live Bootleg, Aerosmith, and Ted Nugent Double Live Gonzo. We'll put that in a track, because I had a multi-track recorder at home. We'll put that in one of the tracks, and we will make it sound like we're playing in an arena. So that's what we did, and that's what I'm going to play for you right now. I'm going to play Superstar from that album we put out called You Will Not Be Getting Paid. Hold on before I stop that, just a second. Thank you for listening, friends. I hope you enjoyed this Dog Days of Podcasting Day 4. Find this show, rockandrollgeek.com. Value for value. Please keep the donations coming, because without your donations, this show would die a horrible, putrid, shitting and puking off of blood sausage from Croatia kind of death. Here's American Heartbreak, Superstar. I'll talk to you tomorrow, friends.
A rock and roll party on a Monday night, ladies and gentlemen. Can you feel it? Oh yeah, I know, I can feel it too. This next song, I'm gonna turn over the mic to my good friend, the porn king of Europe, the RDL master, from Jacksonville, Florida, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Craig Butler. Why your latchkey, I was in a room, she waits for her man to show.
It's a rock and roll geek train wreck.